Not too long ago, Dangerous released a new update. It's a little late, but it's fine. It's fine. So I thought, why not take a look at the update as a whole and see if it was a good decision to make the changes or not really worth adding, just being a waste of space. I'll be talking about the small stuff like dialogue and animations. There's the smaller game-changing stuff like the items and new trinket, then the bigger stuff with the map changes and of course the new Toon Yatta. There were a couple changes added to this update that don't affect gameplay at all, being new dialogue, animation changes, and a sound effect for Bobette. Obviously, as a new Toon, Yatta has the dialogue that every Toon has at the end of floors in completing a machine. However, alongside her getting a ton of conversations with other Toon, there was a ton added, so nearly every Toon, if not all Toons, can talk to each other, with the exception of the holiday Toons, which I predict may come during a repeat Christmas event, but who knows. This is just really cool being able to see how characters would talk to each other in canon, and it makes bigger runs have more stuff to be said in the elevator, which not anything major, is just cool being able to see more. A lot of the new dialogue is just really fun to read, and I like having more characterization for them as well, especially when they only had so much before this. Then moving on to the new animations for Pebble and his twisted form. Base Pebble is generally more animated in his run, idle, and extraction animation. Nothing really changed all that much, but they feel more touched up and fit in better with the more recent tunes. He does have a new walking animation though, which looks a lot more like a walk compared to his old animation, and I really like it. He just looks very head empty, which for a dog it really works. And also it's funny for him just distracting. Then he also got an auto animation of him doing a little spin. Once again, it works for a dog like Pebble. Overall, I really like them. Similarly to a majority of Pebble's animations, Twisted Pebble animations are just mostly touch-ups. So all the animations have bigger movement, which I think works well with the way Twisteds are in the first place, and even more being that he is, again, a dog. The final small thing added is giving Bobette a sound effect to her dialogue, like the other mains have. I don't like it though. I was expecting to think a jingle bell or sleigh bell, since, Christmas theme, but it sounds like a smoke alarm beep. It's not a nice noise at all, so I think it should be changed. Due to Yatta revolving around candy, as will be discussed later, there are some changes to items as well as some additions. Starting with the Enigma candy was replaced with a Jawbreaker, still giving a random 50% boost, but now it lasts for 20 seconds, making it feel a lot more useful when you do get a good effect. Still random, that also has limited use. Then the instructions now gives a 100% extraction speed buff, so it's a lot more worth buying and using, or saving, than it was before. And with a new item, it makes sense. The Stealth candy also got a buff, however stealth is only really important with your base stat. Any importance of it has to be throughout an entire round, not just for a couple seconds. Still cool to be getting a buff, but it's nothing special. Then the new items, firstly being an extraction candy. This gives 50% extraction speed buff by 5 seconds, being exactly half of instructions. Most likely why it got a buff. Since you can just find this, it is like skill check candy to me, where it's nice to just use it while it's not super common. The common's not all that hard to find either. Similarly, there's also the stamina candy, which gives stamina regeneration for 50% for 20 seconds. The protein bar still exists, which does 150% for 15 seconds, so what's worse, it's also more common to find and is a part of Yatta's ability, making it be fine that it exists. This update, Scraps got a buff to make her at least a little better. Now, using her ability, she can grapple onto both players and machines. Personally, I don't think this will make her a good Toon exactly, because her stats are still pretty bad, all things considered, and no ability can fix that. However, it definitely makes her better than she was before. It allows her to get places a little faster for one, which, with her poor movement speed, does help by conserving stamina. Then, while I won't super often, especially early on, it can help with getting away from Twisteds. And I didn't do a super long round to test her new ability with, but the only time I found her ability useful was against Twisted Pebble, so it at least says that. I would say it is only really helpful with the mains, maybe Yatta, Toodles, and Chi-Chi too, but they don't have any special abilities, and Toodles has bad attention span, so you don't need it as much. With easier Twisteds, you can just run away from them as long as you have stamina, so the tail isn't going to be that helpful super often. However, with the higher speed of mains, especially Pebble, plus V's slowness, and Astro's tired effect, I do think it can be helpful if there is a machine near you. This stuff is an issue of you needing to have a machine near you, which won't always be an option, so this ability is quite situational. Still, even if you are more likely to be in a good situation, I do prefer this over grappling onto people though, because if you do that while being chased, you end up just giving them the Twisted unless they have higher stealth. Most Toons have stealth like Scrap, so it is based on distance. By grappling, then running away, you're more likely to just cause someone else to be chased. That is a big reason why I don't like Scrap's ability, honestly. So having the ability to grapple onto machines when being chased does help, since you aren't going to nearly always give someone the Twisteds. Also, another nice thing is that if you're close to a machine, you can see the outline. But the range isn't super big, and you can't tell if it's done based on that. So, was giving Scrap's buff a good decision? Definitely. It does help occasionally with survival, and pretty often while traversing the map. Does it make her a good Toon overall? No. Her stats are the thing that really pulls her down, and this ability does not balance them out at all. Okay, now it is time for the star of the update, the new Toon Yatta. Starting off with her stats, there's a lot to talk about. Her skill check is the base 3 stars, then she has 4-star movement speed, 1-star stamina, 2-star stealth, and 5-star extraction speed. This is really good because she can distract most Toons with dog flesh and extract really fast. With base skill check giving her participation award and magnifying glass, this is not too bad to hit consistently, so she's really fast extractor on her 5-star extraction speed. Then she can distract well with her 4-star movement speed. However, I wouldn't suggest her for newer distractors because of her 1-star stamina, making it more difficult to factor Toons like Toodles, Gigi, or Shelly. Of course, a good distractor can do them pretty well though. And if you can't wait during panic because of her stamina, I would suggest getting them off you before heading to the elevator so you don't lead them and cause someone else to get hurt. Her stealth also helps with keeping twisted on her, which is nice. However, it can be difficult when you're not extracting, so that's where trigger combinations come in. If you're distracting, it's dog flesh and 2D shoes. However, if you aren't, I would say use magnifying glass and dog flesh. That way you can do machines pretty quickly and still outwalk most twisted to get away from them easier. Any Toon with 4-star movement speed can use dog flesh for survival, but Yatta is the one that needs it the most due to her stamina and lower stealth. Then, moving on to her ability, which is a passive, and makes her already good stats into an amazing Toon. Yatta's ability has her drop 2 random candies on the ground when completing a machine, and 4 candies if she gets hurt. The candies include the candies for each stat, gumballs, jawbreakers, chocolate bars, and boxes of chocolates. Yeah, she can drop one of the best items in the game by just completing a machine. Admittedly isn't super common, but I know I'm not lucky enough. Admittedly isn't super common, but I know I'm not lucky enough to have gotten them as much as I have. So it isn't really the rarest thing, especially if she has doing plenty machines. The rest of the candies aren't really bad either. Chocolates, jawbreakers, and most of the stat candies are not too bad to have. Sure, there's a couple bad items, but you still get plenty of good items. Plus, she technically goes very well with the Satan Toon because of her ability, that being Sprout, and technically Tegan too, but she heals herself, so it isn't as important. Since you get tapes from using an item, you can just pick up the items Yatta drops to get a bunch of tapes. Sure, a single item isn't a lot of tapes, but they add up pretty fast. In one really long run I did, I got a ton of tapes for picking up the dropped items, taking basically everything, even boxes of chocolates if we agree that no one needed it. I would say Yatta is a great member for a team that is planning to go really far for the tape, as I mentioned, and giving allies boxes of chocolates. Plus, her stats work really well for a backup distractor, which also uses dog flesh and magnifying glass, making that combo even better. She can do machines fast and get rewards from it. Then, on a really bad floor, she can distract easier twisted, while a main distractor takes someone like Pebble. That's it for the playable Toon, but there's a bit more being her twisted version and her trinket. Twisted Yatta is a common for some reason. Honestly weird since she is so good, but to buy her you need 15 Toons unlocked, so you won't be getting her early. Yatta is decently threatening, being that her chase speed is 19, the same as Gigi, and 1 under Toodles and Shelly. This makes her a pretty fast Toon that can be threatening if you struggle getting away from her. Plus, you'll see her often since she's a simple common Toon. I do wish she did something more though, or at least was rarer. The commons don't do a lot, and it's boring to just add another one. Instead, I think making her an uncommon or rare with a more unique ability would have been a better choice. But in the end, it's not a big deal, and Twisted Yatta is still pretty special with her being so fast for a common especially. Then, there's also her trinket that you get for 100% research, the Party Popper. This trinket makes twists in a decently big range be highlighted for 5 seconds when you get onto a machine. This is okay really, but not a great choice. If you want to keep seeing nearby twisted, you keep getting on and off the machine, which makes doing it a lot slower, so it isn't that worth it to do. Plus, that first 5 seconds is the least important time. It is more important when you've been on a machine for longer and twists may have started moving your direction. I think it would have been better if it was more permanent. Even if it like faded in and out, it still would have been better, which maybe would have been more fitting for a rare twisted being another reason she shouldn't have been a common. Yara is an amazing Toon to play as, being one of the best in the game from an objective standpoint, but her twisted could have been a bit more interesting, even if still somewhat threatening, and I think it has a cool idea, but could have been executed better. Finally, what originally was the big part of the update, along with more new animations, changes to the maps. We knew about both the warehouse map having some changes and the Shelly map being completely changed, but the gift shop also had some small changes that we didn't know of until the update was released. Starting with the smallest change, I'll talk about the gift shop first. Most of the map was unchanged. Maybe the middle area had some small changes, but I have noticed anything, and I believe it was only the maze area being no longer a maze. Now, keeping some of the walls that go into corner-like areas, but the middle areas there that made it actually maze were all removed, being replaced with an island, making it a pretty decent distractor spot now. If you have higher stealth, there's only like 2 machines that are behind a wall, and one of those isn't a big issue if you have higher stealth. The other is the same, but can be more dangerous for teams with the same stealth instead of higher. A good change, really, even if I'm pretty used to the maze existing. Then the warehouse has some untouched areas, and a complete change of some others. The middle area is a bit more open, removing one of the islands from it, so it's still a fine area, really. The tiny room next to one of the elevators also lost a hiding spot, which I don't really like. It was already a good AFK area and it worked well, usually for when a machine is in that room. Then, both the lore and corner hallways were changed to be actual rooms. The windy one turned into having an island, plus a little room that goes into the wall, making a better area to be in, instead of having to try and run through it. Then the lore room is less deep, with it not being through a tight area into another tight area. Now being a more clear room with the fences, now being more of a clear room with the fences having an opening straight into it. There are also some machine spawns there, making it feel like it's actually part of the map, and not just an extra for some lore. The lore wasn't moved either, since there is a little pocket area in the room that has the same stuff. Finally, being the biggest change, the Shelly map. Firstly, to make things simpler, the elevator with the picnic tables, and as a theater next to it, I'll call elevator A, while elevator B is the one with the dinosaur on the wall in front of it. Starting with elevator A, that area still has picnic tables for islands, but they're laid out better, so it's a good change. Then the theater has its island moved, but there's a new island that moves the corner, which I do prefer. Then the left elevator A is now a pretty good area with some islands around, more open instead of being a giant hallway with 2 corner rooms. That was an awful area before, but now it's pretty decent overall, I think. Definitely a huge improvement. Then elevator B has some changes to the areas to the right, both losing their islands, which feels weird. You can hide, but islands are usually preferred and way more consistent. I wish at least one of these kept an island instead of removing them both. Then, while being more in the middle, there's an area to the left of elevator B, which also had an island good for getting twisted off, even if not amazing at it. Now, it can let you hide, but it's not an island, so it's just way worse. Doesn't help that the island in the middle was also removed, so it can be hard getting to an island in the area around elevator B. I think this is an improvement over the original, but not everything had to be changed. The bad is now a lot better than it was, and there's space for distracting at least. However, the areas that were fine and had islands got those removed, making that an area that could be annoying. Sure, you do some turns, so twists are likely to get off you, but there's a good amount of twists where when you do get this floor, which makes an island way better. Some of the changes were just not needed, but I'm glad it was changed to be generally better overall. So that is the entirety of the update. I'd say that this was a pretty great update. I would say pretty much everything about this update is good. Sure, there's some small bad stuff like Bobette's noise and Twisted Yatta and her trinket being a bit disappointing, but the trinket especially is not a big deal. And even Chili's map with some bad changes is still a better map. Then everything else is just great. The new dialogue, animations, and Yatta as a Toon is just amazing, making this a very strong update and one to be remembered, I'm sure.